Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to week 8 of the Dorton and Duckett Debate Podcast. I am Lucas Dorton. As always, I am joined by my partner in crime, Mr. Nicholas Duckett himself. How are we doing today, Nick?
Not too bad, man. Too bad.
That's good. Well, we have a lot to talk about. A lot to talk about. So this is going to be, which is good because the last couple of weeks we've been struggling to try and actually find decent stuff to talk about. We've been having to scratch the surface. So we are going to get right into things. We're going to start because there's a lot of negatives. We're going to start with a here, and we're going to start with the national championship game between LSU and Clemson. This was a very good game, Nick. You were looking pretty good there with your prediction of Clemson as they got out to that early lead. What were you thinking in that one?
When Clemson was up 17-7, man, I was confident. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be right about this one. Yeah, it turns out, no, I wasn't. Wrong with the football pick again. But no, I mean, they were up 17-7. I was confident. I'm like, you know what? I've been riding Clemson because they haven't lost in darn near 2 years. They got the experience. They've been here before, and they were up 17-7. And I'm like, see, this is why I picked them. But then Burrow, pulled the Burrow, and that was that.
Yeah, I mean, Burrow definitely showed why he's going to be the potential probably number one overall pick. He looked amazing, and not to take away, too, from what LSU had. I mean, they have an absolutely amazing team. We mentioned on the podcast before that their offensive line won the award for the best offensive line in the nation, which is huge. I mean, you can take an average quarterback, and if you put him behind a really solid offensive line, I mean, you can make him look like the best. You really can. So that's huge for him, and obviously for LSU as well, too. They had a really tough road to do it. A lot of times you see with national championship teams that they aren't playing top teams. Maybe one or two, not very many though. In this one, LSU played a lot of top teams and beat them.
Yeah, they actually beat the preseason number 1, 2, 3, and 4. I mean, that's impressive. And besides maybe Alabama, all of them I think were by more than one score. I mean, they won handily too in a lot of those tough games, which is very, very impressive. I mean, I guess my main takeaway out of this game was LSU and Burrow are as good as advertised. Like I said, I picked against them. I was riding with Clemson, and LSU showed me why I should have picked them all along. I had even said they looked like the best team in college football this year, the whole year they have. I'm just going to go with Clemson because they haven't lost and they haven't given me a reason to pick against them yet. But clearly LSU showed they're as good as they had been all year. They're as good as maybe any offense has ever been in college football, to be honest. I mean, Joe Burrow, my goodness, 60 touchdown passes in 1 year. That's the NCAA record for touchdown pass in a season. He's got the most touchdowns responsible for in a season. I mean, they got Thaddeus Moss, I think, had 2 touchdowns. The offensive line's great. I mean, that offense is just loaded. And the defense did plenty fine, too. So that LSU team, they showed me I shouldn't have picked against them. That team is legit, man.
Yeah, it's interesting too, that it really towards the end of the game wasn't kind of close. Trevor Lawrence kind of fell off a little bit towards the end. They weren't really able to get a lot of solid offensive drives going. So I guess this kind of begs the question: is this the best single season that you have ever seen from a quarterback in the NFL or heard of? Or sorry, in college football, not the NFL.
In college, yeah. Off the top of my head, I mean, I can't think of as many seasons in college football individually for quarterbacks as I would be able to in NFL. But I mean, I'm just thinking, Manziel, RG3, Newton, I think is maybe the closest one to Burrow. I think that comes to mind. Maybe a Vince Young. But to my best knowledge and memory, this is the best. I think what Burrow just did here. Like I mentioned just a bit ago, he set the college record for pass touchdowns in a year and touchdowns responsible for. I know this is part on the team too, but they beat the 1 through 4 in AP preseason. They beat like 6 or 7 ranked teams. So it showed he wasn't just doing this out of bad competition, which is obvious. He's in the SEC, but just saying, he's done this against the good teams and the bad teams. So I think, yes, I think it is.
Yeah, I agree too. It's going to be hard to find seasons that were as good. Maybe other positions, running backs, wide receivers, I'm sure maybe have had really, really solid seasons. Yeah. As far as quarterback play, I can't think of another single season that was better than what Joe Burrow did. So now I'm going number 1 to Cincinnati. That's going to be huge.
Yeah, and I think it was already obvious he was going to go number 1, and now after this game, I think it's just more obvious. I mean, I just don't see why I don't see why you wouldn't take him number 1. I mean, and right. if you didn't need a quarterback, then I would understand. But then you trade it away, and I think Cincy will just take Burrow number 1. So, I think he pretty much. I don't think he really even needed to play well to get the number 1 overall, but I think now that he did, it's almost certain. I think.
Right. What I hope, what my Miami Dolphins do, I don't think it will happen. But let's just assume, for just argument's sake, Cincinnati, they decide they want to go with Andy Dalton. They say Andy Dalton's the way to go. We're on the Dalton train. We're going to keep going. We're going to go with Andy Dalton. Then the next picks before Miami, Washington has a pick. They got the GOAT, Dwayne Haskins. So you don't need to get the quarterback. The New York Giants have Daniel Jones, so they don't need a quarterback either. And then the Detroit Lions as well. Also, Matt Stafford probably going to be coming back healthy. They're not going to need a quarterback either. So that's a ginormous thing. Like I said, I don't expect it to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But if that does happen, if he drops to Miami, I'd be very much okay with that. Now, not to say that I'm not content with Tua, from Alabama. I think he's a very good player. But if Joe Burrow, if all that stuff were to happen, that'd be absolutely bonkers if it did. Then that would be really cool to see. I don't think it would.
Oh, definitely. And you bring in a good scenario like Washington, New York. They're not going to be looking for quarterbacks. They just drafted what they hope to be a future. Bengals do go Dalton, and as you said, it's unlikely, but it's possible. But even if they did do that, I don't think they would be like, all right, well, then we don't need Burrow. Let's draft Chase Young number 1. I think they would trade it because when you got Burrow there, I think there's no way that you're either not drafting him or trading your pick. So even if they did elect to go with Dalton, I think in order to get Burrow, you're going to have the number 1 overall pick, whether you're the Bengals or someone who trades for it. So even if Miami somehow ended up with Burrow, I think it would have to be if they traded him. I don't think he's going to drop that far. I just think there's going to be someone trading up to get him if the Bengals decided they didn't want him. And that's where I ask you, you want Burrow, obviously, which I totally understand. And the Dolphins have all this draft capital from the Minka trade and other trades they've made. So would you rather, let's just say Burrow, if you want Burrow, you have taken number 1 overall. Let's just say that, because I feel you do. Would you rather trade, let's say, your 5th overall pick now and some future first-round picks to go get him? Or would you rather just keep the draft capital you have and draft multiple players for the future?
Yeah, no, that's a great question for sure. At the end of the day, we've invested a lot of time into getting those picks, like you mentioned. We have the 5th overall pick for us just being bad this year, and then we also have Houston's first-round pick this year for trading Tunsil and Kenny Stills, and then we also have, like you mentioned, Pittsburgh's first-round pick for trading Minka Fitzpatrick there too. I would much rather keep the draft capital, keep the picks. Like I said, I'm very content with Tua, and if you can keep those types of players for the long haul, keep those picks for the long haul. I think that's huge, especially if a team like Miami who's rebuilding, trying to get better. The more picks you have early on is only going to help you. I mean, obviously there's a bust, but there's a very high chance that those picks actually pan out. So I think you absolutely have to keep those picks. Now, if they were like picks in the future, give it, a few years down the road, some first-round picks, sure, then I'm 100% okay with that. I don't think that would be able to happen. I think they'd have to have some picks from this draft for that to happen. But I would much rather keep the picks that we have and get Tua than to trade everything that we've worked for to get Burrow.
And firstly, I think that would be the way to go, especially when you're a team. I mean, if you have the 5th overall pick, it means clearly you have, some issues, probably more than just your quarterback. So I say you worked so hard to get this draft capital. Now utilize it and draft multiple players. Plus, even if you don't get Burrow, you probably at least have a very good chance of getting a quarterback in 2 at 5 anyways. So yes, I would do that as well. I would just stick with what you got. But I just want to clarify. I do think, I think you would agree. We think Burrow will go number 1 to the Bengals. But let's just say the Bengals don't take him. I believe you're going to have to get the number 1 overall pick to get him. I don't think the Bengals are going to draft anybody else with the 1. I mean, maybe Chase Young. But to me, as good as Burrow looks, I don't think whether it's the Bengals or whoever takes him, it's going to be number 1, I believe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, obviously. Once we get closer to the draft, I'm sure we'll come up with an episode in itself just of a draft preview, maybe make some predictions, what we think is going to happen. So we'll have to see what comes of that, obviously. But so now after that, now we can actually move on to some other topics. Now moving on to the NFL. Julian Edelman was arrested at the beginning of vandalism. Now, supposedly he had a few too much to drink and then jumped on a hood of a car, I think in Beverly Hills or something. Now, nothing obviously is going to come of this. I don't think he got charged, fined, or anything. But it definitely is not a very good look considering that the Patriots just lost and make to the AFC Championship for the first time in, 75 years, it seems like. And, might want to leave as well, too. If you're a Patriots fan, are you worried about this at all?
I mean, not really. I mean, you don't ever want to see one of your players get arrested, but I think it's mainly just, a guy who had a little bit too much drink, whether he did or not, or just a dude who did something stupid and, probably now is regretting it. It is, not that it's funny. I don't want to sound like I'm encouraging this, but it's kind of funny how the Patriots, for the first time in like a decade, don't make the AFC Championship, and now they got players going on getting arrested before the AFC Championship is even played. So, for a city between Boston/New England for 2 decades now has pretty much had nothing but championships. This is about the first 2 weeks they've had that aren't very good with this and the Red Sox scandal and Cora and whatnot. So, Welcome to the tough part about being a sports fan, Boston fans, because you finally have witnessed it. And I'll take your spot any day.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right. I don't think this Edelman thing's a big deal. I mean, yeah, you don't want guys getting arrested, but I think it was just I don't know. I think it was just one guy did something stupid one night and probably is regretting it now.
Right. Like I said, I don't expect anything to come off this, but it is a little interesting story. That was the very first thing in the week on Sunday, and I figured we weren't going to have a lot to talk about, and so I just put it on there. But trust me, I was very much wrong in that. Move on to some more NFL talk, though. We do have a couple playoff games going on tomorrow. The Green Bay Packers, we're going to start in the NFC. Nick, you're an NFC guy, so we're going to start there just because I like it. So, Green Bay Packers travel to San Francisco to play the 49ers. Who do you have in this one and why?
I have the Niners. Now, I don't want to be biased. There's nothing worse than a biased sports fan. But anytime it comes to the Packers, as a Viking fan, once the Vikings are out, all I got left to root for is against the Packers, the NFC. So I want nothing more than to see them lose. But I truly think, with my Viking fan on the side, I have the Niners. But I do think it's going to be close. You see, these teams played each other already this season in San Fran, and San Fran just beat the brakes right off of them. So a lot of people are thinking, well, we've been here, done that, San Francisco. But I don't think so. Now, Sanford is really healthy. They're healthy again, which is a plus. But, Rodgers is a vet. He's going to be able to overcome some of the stuff that happened in the first game, I think. They're going to have a new game plan for him. And although I haven't been too high on either of these teams this year, although clearly I should have been, the Packers have been playing much better lately than I think they were at the beginning of the season. And they've given me reason to think maybe they can take the upset. But being that Sanford is the home team and are completely healthy and looked very, very good defensively last week, I'm going to lean Sanford. But I think it's going to be close. Because at the end of the day, even though I've talked about how Rodgers has declined, I think he's still better than Garoppolo, and Green Bay has the quarterback advantage, which I think is huge. And I could see this going either way. But I'm taking Sanford, but I do think it's going to be very close, very close.
Yeah, so I agree with you in one aspect of it. I disagree with you in another aspect of it. So I agree with you. I think the 49ers are going to win. I do think that is going to happen. Personally, I don't even think it's going to be a close game at all. I think it's going to be a blow-up. I would not be surprised if it's a couple-score game. Right now, the spread, I believe, is at 7.5. Personally, I think the 49ers are not only going to be able to cover that, but is actually going to blow that away. The San Francisco defense is so good. You talk about, obviously, last week with Dalvin Cook, how much the Vikings relied on him and how much he really balled out for the Vikings. And then they went against that front line of Bosa, Armstead, D Ford, DeForest Buckner. That's a really, really solid defensive line there. And they held Dalvin Cook, and they made Kirk Cousins make plays. Like I said, I don't think Kirk Cousins is a bad quarterback, but I think when you've been relying on a guy like Dalvin Cook, I think you have to do a lot more than I'm sure he was expecting. And I think in this one is going to be no different. Aaron Jones is a really, really solid running back. I think a lot of teams would love to have him on the team. I don't think he's going to get anything going, which means Rodgers is going to have to throw the ball. And he's going to have to make some deep plays, which he really hasn't done or hasn't had to the last few seasons. And I think it's going to be extremely tough for him for the fact that Devontae Adams is by far their top target, probably their top offensive player by far. Right. Then after that, and put Aaron Jones aside, I'm more talking of the receiver tight ends. After that, it is a significant drop-off of who their number two is. You look at a lot of teams, they have a solid number one, but if that number one is covered or they're not playing well, there's another reliable guy that you can go to. If you're Packers, outside of Devontae Adams, you don't really have a number two. And to me, because I would assume Richard Sherman would probably be covering or shadowing Devontae Adams, maybe not for the entire game, but I would say for maybe 80-90% of the game, I would expect Sherman to be behind Adams, which means somebody else is going to have to make a play. And quite frankly, I don't think it's going to be able to happen.
And that's a really good point with that Sherman thing. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was thinking that too. Like, are they going to fall? Are they going to shadow him the whole game? I don't know, but I'm sure it'll be most of it. And if Sherman does what he's been doing all year and takes down Adams, it's going to be really hard for Green Bay to find other offense. However, I will say this, and I know last week I was talking about running back receiving yards, and I don't think they really mean much. I mean, I still don't, but for Green Bay, their running backs are a huge part of their passing game. And it does, it clearly has helped them a bit. And I do think Jones and Jamal Williams will be able to get something going in the passing game. And they should be able to run at least a little bit, at least better than what the Vikings did, that's for sure. Because they have, quite frankly, they have to if they want to win. And I don't think they're going to, run all over San Fran, but I think they'll be able to get enough going to have somewhat of a decent offensive game anyways. And I know I'm picking San Fran. However, I think something that could potentially determine this game and end up in a Packers win is the turnover margin. I think turnover margin is huge, just huge in determining games. And Green Bay just does not turn the football over. They just don't. Rodgers, for the most part, never has. And Jimmy Garoppolo had 14 interceptions in the regular season and at least one, I think it was just one, but at least one last week against the Vikings where he threw the pick to Kendricks. And I think that could be a big factor in determining this game.
So, interesting thing. You and I both watch Colin Cowherd. I was a huge Colin Cowherd fans on the podcast. And I don't remember what day it was, but he was talking about actually turnovers. And he was saying how Rodgers, kind of like I mentioned before, he hasn't really made the big throws. He hasn't done the deep ball throws like a lot of times we're so used to seeing Rodgers do. But they brought up a stat that was actually very interesting, and which was the last time that Aaron Rodgers threw double-digit picks in a season was the year that the Packers actually won the Super Bowl, which I thought was very interesting. Now, I'm not saying, oh, yeah, throw a lot of picks and you're going to win games, but sometimes when you're a high-profile player and one of the better players in the game, I think that's something that you have to do. You have to throw the ball. You have to make risky decisions to make the big plays happen. Jimmy Garoppolo also, they talked about him, how he throws sometimes can get a little interception happy and throw a lot of picks. And I believe in his career, and I don't have the exact stat with me, and I should have written it down, but that he has a winning record and a pretty significant winning record when he throws multiple picks in a game. So, and for Jimmy G, I think it's a lot easier just because he has a really, really solid defense. So if he throws a pick, he's not necessarily worried because the defense normally is able to stop him, and then they can do something again on the offensive side of things. But nonetheless, they might have to throw the ball deep, and I think if Davante Adams is covered, Rodgers might throw a lot of picks, and it might not look good for them. But I think that's something that you have to at least try for the Packers because your running game isn't really going to be there.
I guess that's that statistic you threw out there, that quite frankly just shocks me because, like I said, I think a huge determinant in who wins a game, maybe even the biggest one most times, is turnover margin. But considering the only Super Bowl Rodgers has won is when he had over 10 turnovers, I guess maybe that stat's not as important or a little more misleading than I thought. Because I guess, you throw the ball deep, say it is picked. I mean, it's like a punt anyways, I guess. So I guess, honestly, that just really shocks me. With that being said, though, I do think Green Bay is going to win the turnover margin, and I do think it could have effect. But to your point, although Garoppolo has been a little turnover happy, yes, he knows he has a defense behind him that is good, and it's not like, oh, I should just go throw a pick because I have a defense. No, but he knows, if I throw a pick, he's got a defense behind him that will still keep him in the game. And at the end of the game this year, he has been pretty good. So I'll give him that. And I think, obviously, this is going to be a close game, and it may come down to whatever quarterback can make the play at the end. And although I trust Rodgers more, Garoppolo's gotten it done. And being at San Fran's at home, I am going to lean with them. But like I said, I think this is going to be close.
Yeah. We'll have to see what happens. And another factor, too, right quick before we move on, too. On the offensive side of things, San Francisco has a lot of different factors for them. Their running backs, you can give it to any running back. It feels like they're going to put up 100 or some yards a game. Yeah. And then the receiving is obviously you got Deebo Samuel, Emmanuel Sanders, George Kittle. Jerry Alexander and King are really solid corners, but I think they're going to have a tough time being able to stop that high-powered offense, too. But there is another game going on. The Tennessee Titans are heading to Arrowhead to play the Kansas City Chiefs. Nick, what is your prediction on this one?
I'm taking the Titans. And like I said, I don't want to be biased, but when you get to the conference championship games, for me it's hard because, you're rooting for the team. I mean, this is to go to Super Bowl. I want a team that I somewhat like to be in the Super Bowl, and that's Tennessee. Right now, that's who I'm rooting for. So I'm trying not to be biased, but honestly, like when I think of it, if Derrick Henry runs the ball like he's been doing, I don't think they're going to lose. Now, I know Kansas City just was down 24-0 and came back in literally a quarter. It took them a quarter to come back from down 24-0, and then they ended up winning by 20, which it's never happened in playoffs before. We were down by that much and then went by 20. And Kansas City's at home. They got maybe the best quarterback in football. I know I said it was Wilson last week, but, it's between Mahomes and Wilson, I think. So, there's a lot of things going for Kansas City. But I just think with Derrick Henry running the ball the way he has been, and Tennessee, they just honestly seem to be really confident right now. I'm going to take them. And I don't know why I always want to say Fitzpatrick.
The guy's a beast. You got to keep
Tannehill, he hasn't even thrown for 100 yards yet in the playoffs, and they've won twice. So it's unlike. So I just think, what happens? He throws for 200, which is entirely possible because Tannehill's had a very good year. If he can put up a good game along with Henry, they could be even more dangerous than what they've looked already. So I'm rolling with Tennessee.
I really want you to be right, Nick. I have never wanted you to have a pick go your way more than this one right here.
Well, good luck with that, because picks don't go my way often.
Yeah. I want Tennessee, like we mentioned, if Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry go to the Super Bowl, I'm getting a Ryan Tannehill Titans jersey. Obviously, you said you're going to get Derrick Henry Titans. So I really hope that happens, and I really want to be wrong. You see a lot of times in sports with Cinderella stories. March Madness is a prime example. You see a team that was low-ranked seed, wasn't expected to do much, go on a little bit of run, win a few games, make it to the Elite Eight, maybe the Final Four, Sweet 16 sometimes. But then they fall off. Normally they run into a buzzsaw. And unfortunately, I think this is what's going to happen in this game here. I think Andy Reid finally now and the Chiefs, their best time to go to the Super Bowl and potentially win, at least go to the Super Bowl, is going to be now. You're talking about a playoffs that now doesn't have a Tom Brady-led New England Patriots there. The best team in the league, arguably, you could say, the Baltimore Ravens, not in the playoffs anymore. Going up against a Titans team that has played a lot better than I think a lot of people thought they were going to. Now, very smart coaching as well, too, obviously, giving Henry the ball and pretty much out of the way. But having said that, I do think the Chiefs are going to win. I think it'll be a close game. But I will say this. This is another stat that I saw on Colin Cowherd on the Herd. Again, love Colin Cowherd here on the Dorton and Doetkott Debate podcast. Maybe he can bring us on a guest. But but they brought something up, and I don't remember if it was – I think it was this entire season. I don't know if it was the quarterbacks that are currently left or just in general, but the quarterback that actually had the highest QBR in the fourth quarter this season was Ryan Tannehill. I think it was like 137 or something. So, having said that, I think if Derrick Henry isn't able to get things going and is not able to establish that run game like we've seen a lot in the past, if Ryan Tannehill, if you're a Titans fan and they're not able to get it going, if you're a Titans fan, I think Ryan Tannehill can get the job done. So I would not necessarily be worried. I don't think he's going to absolutely blow you out of the water. So, but if it comes down to it, I could definitely see a Ryan Tannehill-led maybe fourth quarter comeback or a big drive in the fourth quarter where Tannehill is going to have to throw the ball to get them a win. I could definitely see that happening. So we'll have to see. Like I said, I think the Chiefs are going to win. I think it'll be a close game. But I really, really want to be wrong, and I hope the Titans win.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think the first quarter is huge. Now, obviously, a game is not really won in the first quarter, as Kansas City showed you last week. Right. But for the Titans, who I am picking to win, I think, although I'm picking them to win, if they're down after like the first quarter, or at half, I'd be doubtful, because I think they have to start off strong. Most of the times, I would say if you win the coin toss, you should defer so you can start in the second half, see where you're at. But in this case, I would definitely elect to receive if I'm Tennessee, because, like I said, I think pretty much the only reason I'm picking Tennessee is because of Henry. I mean, it honestly is. And because of his ability to keep the ball, to keep you moving, get first down, to keep that clock running. So I think they have to start off with the lead. So I think if they win the toss, they should elect to receive and just try to march it down and get a touchdown right away and play with the lead. Because although we've talked about Tannehill and how I do think we can trust him, but at the end of the day, he ain't Mahomes. If you get behind to Kansas City and have to pass on this team, you're probably not going to win. So I think they have to get out early. And when you're behind, it's so easy to abandon that run game. So I think they have to start off ahead, and then they can run through Henry. Because if you have to run the game through Tannehill when you're facing Mahomes, it's going to be tough. So I think the first quarter is huge in this game. And I'm interesting to see how it plays out, that first quarter especially.
Yeah. The way you start games is ginormous. If you're off to a terrible start, it's really hard to come back from that. Like we saw the Chiefs last week. Now, it made it look like a really easy game because they put up 51. At the end of the day, you definitely don't want to start like that. So we'll have to see what happens. It'll be interesting with that. But now, NFL overtime. That is a topic that is debated a lot. Some like it, some people don't. In your opinion, Nick, are you content with the NFL overtime rules? And I'm talking as far as if you lose a coin toss, that means you could potentially lose the game if the team scores a touchdown right away. Or would you want to change it? And if so, how would you?
It definitely should be changed. Now, it's better than what it used to be, where even if a team gets a field goal right away, you're done. At least now they have to get a touchdown. Like, I'm not trying to sound bitter, but say the 2010 NFC Championship game between the Saints and the Vikings, Garrett Hartley made a field goal on the first drive of overtime, and then it was over for the Vikings. Then they changed the rule to touchdown, and Matt Ryan and the Falcons lost because of it, and Mahomes lost. Mahomes and the Chiefs lost last year. Now, yeah, you could say, well, they shouldn't have allowed a touchdown, but if they would have won the coin toss, let's just say that Patriots-Chiefs game last year, most people are going to agree with me probably that Kansas City probably would have won that game if they won the toss last year, but they didn't, so they lost. So, yes, they definitely should change it because a coin toss should not be the factor in who wins a game. And I personally would revert to the college way. Not entirely because I believe they started the 30-yard line, which you don't like that because you're already in field goal range. But I think they should do a college us, but start at, say, the opposing 40. So that way if a defense gets a 3-and-out, and then your offense goes and you get 3 first downs at a field goal, you win. You shouldn't just be able to have get stopped on 3 straight plays and you still get a field goal out. But I like the way college does it because it's even and everybody gets the same amount of possessions. So that's the way I would move to. Because the reason we're discussing this in the first place because many people have had issues with NFL overtime. Well, can you recall a time where somebody's had a problem with college overtime? To be completely honest, I can't.
Me either.
Nobody really complains about college overtime. So to me, the NFL should take a book out of the college handbook for once and go with what they do. Maybe revert it a tiny bit, but I like what college does, not what NFL does for overtime.
Yeah, I agree. Something has to change because it's ridiculous. Like you said, the fact that a coin toss can decide a winner, which is dumb. I think it should happen that way. I personally, I think it should just be as simple as play it like another quarter in the NFL. Team kicks off, touchback start 25 or whatever, and then you go down and score. Say you score a touchdown, then you kick off again. Other team has a chance to score a touchdown, and then it's over. I don't think your idea is a bad one by any means. I don't think it has to get too much complicated. Besides, just play it like another regular quarter. If it was first, second, third, or fourth quarter in the NFL, might as well just do it that way. And now, obviously, having said that, I will say, in case of a team starts with the ball and they throw a pick six, then I feel the game should be over just for the fact that, well, you had the ball, you had a chance to score, but you intercepted it like the other team. But yeah, I personally, something definitely has to change. I think NFL, that should be a huge discussion topic this offseason once the Super Bowl and everything is played, because something's got to change. Like I said, it's ridiculous the fact that people, and there are some people I've seen that are okay with it, and mainly it's the fans of the teams that are on the winning side of that overtime rule where it benefits them, and not so much on the losing side of it. So I think something definitely has to change because you talk about obviously fair in football. People, well, it's a game. It's a professional game. There shouldn't be anything fair about it. Well, then you're pretty much just stupid. Yeah, there's nothing fair about this. Like last year, like you said, you're telling me you didn't even give the NFL MVP, one of the best seasons that we've seen, a chance to even touch the ball in overtime. It's ridiculous. And Matt Ryan.
2 years in a row.
Yep.
With Ryan and Mahomes.
Yep. Well, something definitely has to change. We'll have to see what happens with that.
Yeah.
But we'll move on to another hiring. Nick, you were pretty familiar with this man. Kevin Stefanski signed with the Cleveland Browns to be their head coach. Obviously, you being a Vikings fan, if you are a Browns fan, what would you be telling them right now, or what should they be feeling?
To be honest, I know I should be able to tell them, but I don't even know because, this is a 37-year-old guy. So, to me, not that everybody's the same, but I think I don't want to compare him to McVay because, McVay was exceptional his first year. But I think he's another one of those young offensive-minded guys who are typically, have a lot of variety in their offenses and are willing to stretch boundaries and do all sorts of things, not be so vanilla. But that being said, this last game against San Fran, our offense is about as vanilla as can be with Stefanski running the show. So I just don't know. There was weeks this year where I thought Stefanski did a great job, and then there's weeks where I just didn't understand what he was doing. So I can't even tell them. I can tell them this though. I was reading up on Stefanski and the Browns hiring and what led to it, how they feel about it. Well, I stumbled upon a Bleacher Report article, and it mentioned how the Vikings last year, when in the 3 games Stefanski was the interim OC, went from 21.7 points per game to 26. So that's an increase of 4.3, and they went from the number 9. And this year they were the number 8 offense as compared to last year, number 19. So that's a big increase. So those numbers that I just said support Stefanski, being a good offense coordinator and show me maybe they have some promise in this hire. But I just look at it this way. Somebody on Twitter had mentioned this, not exactly the way I'm going to say it, but I thought it was kind of funny because the Vikings have Cousins, a kind of up and down quarterback who seems to, struggle under pressure. They have 2 good wide receivers in Diggs and Thielen, and they have a very good running back. Well, what do the Browns have? 2 good wide receivers, Odell and Landry, a very, very good running back in Chubb, and a quarterback who's got all the intangibles, but just kind of up and down and hasn't seemed to rise above the occasion to get the job done. And Stefanski lost his first, I won one playoff game with the Vikings, but for the most part, his offense was not that great in the playoffs. So as a Browns fan, you just see that, and now what you just expect it to be differently with you. I don't necessarily think that's very smart, but we'll see. We'll see. I think there's potential, but I'm not very confident that it's going to work out with him in Cleveland.
Right. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, one thing that you want in coaches is experience. You want experience, whether it's different coaching, different positions, having different responsibilities. Even being on different teams as well as also helps a lot. Stefanski has just been with the Vikings his whole career. And so that I don't think it's like a huge cause for concern, but now you're going to a division, a completely different conference, number 1, number 2, a division that's going to be very tough compared to a year ago. Last year was the Browns' best chance to win the division. You had Big Ben was gone. They were down to their 3rd string quarterback with Pittsburgh. Cincinnati was absolutely terrible. They didn't have anything going on.
Yeah.
Now the Ravens surprised a lot of people, and I think they played a lot better than people I think thought they would. But still have a decent chance. This year, it's going to be tough. Big Ben's coming back. The Steelers are going to be at full health. The fact that they were able to win the games that they did without him is huge.
Yeah.
And you talk about a Cincinnati team now that will probably be getting Joe Burrow number 1 overall. You're going to get A.J. Green back, hopefully healthy for a full season. Joe Mixon is going to be a baller again. You have a Ravens team who probably isn't going to go in too much of a downhill spiral. I wouldn't expect really anything at all.
I agree.
And, like we mentioned, Pittsburgh as well, too. It's going to be really tough for Stefanski to try and make something happen, but we will have to keep close tabs on him and see if he is able to make something happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad hire. I'm not necessarily going to say it's a good hire. I just think I really don't know what to make about Stefanski. And I did only see a season of him in Minnesota too, or just barely over one. So I guess we'll see. We'll find out.
So there was another
probably better options out there, but we'll see.
Right. So there was another kind of under the radar signing, and you mentioned his name a bunch of times. Pat Shurmur did not go back to the Vikings to be the offensive coordinator. He went to the Denver Broncos to be their offensive coordinator. So obviously I didn't write this on the notes. So this is kind of off the top of my head here. But what was your opinion on that?
Is it a surprise we didn't take him or that we didn't bring him back? From what I heard, a couple days after Stefanski left, it sounded like we weren't looking at Shurmur. We were looking more for guys we already had. So I guess I'm not hearing that he went to Denver doesn't shock me, but hearing what I heard shortly after Stefanski left and that we weren't even really looking at Shurmur, that was shocking to me. Because to me, I don't know why they wouldn't. Part of the reason I want Stefanski to leave in the part of the reason I wanted Stefanski to get this Brown job was because I wanted him gone so he could bring back Shermer. Because Shermer, we went 13-3 and made the NFC Championship with Case Keenum, Latavius Murray, and Jerick McKinnon. I mean, I know the main reason was because of the defense, but that offense for what Shermer had was very good that year. And I want Shermer back and to see what he could have done with Cousins. And the fact that we didn't take that route, we're kind of mainly going to stay in the organization. I don't really like that, but I guess we'll see. But for the Broncos, I think it's a great hire. I think Shermer's has not been a very good head coach, but assistant-wise, he's been very great.
I think it's good for the Broncos. We'll have to see what happens. Obviously, me being out here, I'll keep close tabs on him, and I'll give you a status report each week on that. But so that's all the talk that we have for the NFL. We're going to move on to the MLB, folks. This is probably going to be beef, the absolute beef of our podcast today because there's a lot to talk about. But we're going to start off with a positive, and that is your Minnesota Twins did something. They went and signed Josh Donaldson to a 4-year deal. Obviously, he's not a pitcher, but if you're a Twins fan, Mr. Duckett, how are you feeling about this?
Well, first off, I just want to say the Twins offseason in general, I still think it's a little bit of a failure because they did not address the starting pitching. And I still think they're going to, even with the addition of Donaldson, they're going to make the playoffs and lose in the first round because of the starting pitching, and they didn't address it. Now, for a regular season and a 162-game sample, and compared to 30 other MLB teams, their pitching's all right. But compared to the teams you're going to see in the playoffs, it's not. And they did not address that. So I think the offseason in general is still somewhat of a failure. But I lit up the Twins on Facebook how long ago and said, if we're up to me, nobody should go to opening day, blah, blah, blah. I'll revert back on that a little bit because at the end of the day, they signed someone. Yes, it wasn't a starter, but they finally spent some money, got Josh Donaldson. And this move in particular, I love it. Yes, it's not a pitcher, but it's a great baseball player who's going to help us out a lot. And honestly, the contract's actually pretty good. I know it sounds like a lot of money, but for baseball standards, it's not even really it's not extraordinary for what we've been seeing lately. I know he's 35 and he might not be good in that 4th year, but he should have at least 2 or 3 solid years left. And if he does do good that 4th year, they got a 5th-year team option too. And I know our offense is already really good, so you may say, well, why even need Donaldson? Well, you can always get better. And I think the biggest part of this addition is the defense Donaldson gives you. The Twins' left side of the infield last year was terrible defensively. And now with the addition of Donaldson, he's really going to shore that up. So I like the addition. I really do.
I'm a fan of it, too. Obviously, I would have much rather gotten a big-name pitcher when a big-name pitcher was out there. But sometimes at the end of the day, getting the best available is not a bad thing at all. Like you mentioned, Josh Donaldson, obviously, really known for his offense, a huge offensive guy, but the guy plays absolutely amazing defense. I think the fact that now you're not having Sano having to have his 1-foot range to his right or his left, try and make plays at third base, and now moving over the first, I think that'll be huge for Donaldson, and it'll be big time. So I'm excited to see. Obviously, I don't think their offense is going to have as much success as they did a year ago, but I still think they'll definitely be up there for a little bit. That's for sure.
Yeah. Like I said, and I think it's a lot of people are expecting regression from the Twins offense, which I totally get, but I could also see progression too, because a lot of these guys are really young. But I just want to touch the fact most of them are really young, and Cruz was like the only veteran they really had last year offensively. Well, now they're adding another one, which I do think can have an impact and can really help out a clubhouse. So I think that's the fact that they got a savvy veteran, I think, is a very nice addition too. And Donaldson's still a very good player. He had 37 home runs last year. He's 11th in MVP voting for the NL. So I really like this addition. I really do.
We'll have to see what happens, obviously, if they can make a lot of things going. Maybe if the Twins are ever getting blown out of the game, they'll put Josh Donaldson on the mound to see what he can do, maybe to help him out pitch too. But okay, well, we'll have to find out anyways with that. So with the Houston Astros now, Mr. Duckett, what is going on there? This was an absolute shock. I can't believe what happened. So essentially what happened was Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball came down and brought down the hammer on them, which was essentially that they're going to have to pay a $5 million fine. They're going to lose their draft picks in the first and second round for the next 2 drafts. And AJ Hinch, their manager, and Jeff Luhnow, their GM, is both going to be suspended for the whole season for a year. Now, obviously, the Astros kind of took that in their own hands, and the owner ended up firing AJ Hinch and Jeff Luhnow. But I guess as a baseball fan and you looking at this, there's been a lot of debate. Do you think this is enough, or do you think this is an okay punishment for him?
I do think it's enough. I think Major League Baseball has done a fantastic job handling this. I know it's a not a very good situation, but I think they've done a very good job. I think the suspensions are warranted, and there's probably going to be a lot of people who say, this isn't severe enough. I don't think there's going to be many people who say this is too much. But, for example, before AJ Hinch had even been fired, like when they came out with the news that him and the GM were suspended for a year, I went on Facebook and I actually said, wow, MLB is serious. They're not messing around. This is a very serious suspension. And some people were like, really? You think it's serious? This is nothing. But what I was really getting at is, from what we've seen in recent history, most people are not suspended for a whole year for anything unless it's a second or third or fourth violation. Like with A-Rod, eventually, after multiple times, he finally received a season suspension. But typically, the first violation is not a year suspension. So that shocked me. Like, wow, Major League Baseball is not messing around here. But with that being said, a year suspension, the draft pick's gone, all that. I think I applaud Major League. I think they've done a great job thus far, and not a good situation for them. But I think for the most part they've done a great job, and I'm okay with the decisions they made.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It really is. It's unfortunate because, the Astros are a team that, I had a lot of respect for. Obviously, I did not want this to be true because it just really taints baseball a lot. And it's really unfortunate. I really hope that it wasn't true, like I said. But the fact that it is, the Astros players lose a lot more credibility. They lose a lot more respect a lot of people had. So now my next question for you, Mr. Duckett, is do you think that the Astros players should also be able to have a fine as well, too? Now, obviously, or some kind of punishment handed down toward them. Like I said, I don't think you can. It's hard. You're not going to suspend an entire roster. But is there anything that you think they should do?
I do not. I mean, like you said, you can't really suspend an entire roster. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's very hard to pinpoint what an individual player did. I mean, when you're talking about a whole team of the players. Like, yes, they probably all knew, or most of them knew what was going on, but how much were they involved with it? And even if a lot of them were, how can you really pinpoint who was and who wasn't? And I just think for the most part, the players should not be suspended. And let's say, plus, even if all of them did know about it and were doing it, I don't care how old you are or who you are. But let's just say, you're some random Astros player, and you knew about this, but you didn't want to go along with it. Like, it takes a lot of guts to just stand up and say, I don't want to do this, blah blah blah. So even though a lot of players may have been participating in it, I don't know if it necessarily meant they wanted to. And I'm not trying to excuse this or make it sound okay, but at the end of the day, I just think it's really hard to suspend the players, and I think the main issue should be the front office and suspending them and starting at the top. The players, I mean, I don't really think suspensions are necessary, in my opinion, but I know a lot of people do. I just think, for one, it's very hard to hand out suspensions to these players, and like you said, you can't suspend an entire roster. I mean, come on. And for the most part, I think the players should be left out of it. Whereas I guess, I was reading up on Beltran, which I'm sure we'll get to later, because he was the Mets coach and is now no longer. He was a player and for that team, but he was the only one mentioned, according to USA Today. Carlos Beltran was the only player listed in Manfred's report. about this sign stealing allegation. So in Beltran's case, I mean, he was the only player listed in this report by Rob Manfred. So I guess a suspension for him, I can understand. Why he was the only one to mention, I guess I'm not entirely sure. But considering there wasn't even any other individual players mentioned, I'd say for the most part, just leave them alone. They don't need to be suspended. Keep it at the front office level and do what you need to do there.
Yeah. I agree with you too. I mean, like we said, it's still hard to make something happen with all the players. I think maybe fines. I think fines is probably about the only thing that you can do with that. I think besides that, there's nothing else really that you can do as far as, slap on a wrist or something for the players. I guess how much is the Astros players now integrity kind of out the window, and how much respect have you lost, I guess, for a lot of these players?
I mean, I think the Astros are going to be the least cheered for team in baseball this year. There's a lot of people who are not gonna be Astros fans. I mean, I for one didn't root for them in either the World Series to begin with. So I mean, I wouldn't necessarily consider myself an Astros fan. I definitely will look. I mean, this is not a good look for the Astros. I mean, it definitely, probably. I guess I don't know. It paints a different picture in my head about them. I mean, I'm trying to get over the fact. I don't want to just. I'm really rambling here. I guess I don't want to look at these people like they're so much worse than everybody else. I mean, everybody screws up, and here I'm a Patriots fan, and the Patriots have been in trouble for cheating how many times, But yeah, this is not a good look for baseball, and it's just. I mean, this may have possibly been a difference between them winning the World Series and the Dodgers. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really going to be rooting for the Astros anytime soon. It's not a good look, and it's not cool what they did.
Right. A lot of times in sports, you see with dynasties, teams that get built up at the beginning, kind of like the Warriors. The beginning, a lot of people, oh yeah, they like what the Warriors were doing. They were pulling for them. They thought it was really cool. But then they kept winning, and towards the end, they almost turned into a villain. Not a lot of people ended up liking them. And the Astros, I felt, were a team that no matter how much they kept winning and consistently winning, I think a lot of people still respect them and a lot of people still like them. I still like them. I was a fan of watching them play. But now, like you mentioned, I don't think a lot of people are really going to be pulling for them anymore. And it'll be interesting to see. If you're an Astros player, though, I think you certainly have no reason to dodge interviews. You can't – if people ask you questions about it, you can't dodge it. You got to answer it because you put yourself in that situation. You lost all respect and you lost the ability to be able to decline those kind of questions now with all the stuff coming out. They also brought up something too, as far as now there isn't much traction behind this, so I don't know how much is going to go behind it, but supposedly there were buzzers that were under the players' jerseys around their shoulders, and that whenever they knew a pitch was coming, they also would have like a buzzer shock to their arm or something like that, so they knew that was going to go. I don't know how much truth there is behind that one, but we'll have to keep tabs and keep watching to see if anything comes. But do you think there's really much behind that one at all?